Water. It's in our history, in our mourning, and even in our dreams. It's in the sky and the earth and in us. Both angry and playful. And always there, like a spring just beneath our feet. Plants, animals, and people gathered around it like their lives depended on it. Because they did. They still do. As you watch this, there's the same amount of water on Earth as there was when it was formed. It stays the same, and yet it is always changing. Solid, liquid, gas. And just like water, our lives can change forms too, and we can become something else entirely. My name is Scott Harrison.
Just listen.
This is my wife, my son, and my one on the way. I lead an organization called Charity Water, and our mission is to bring clean water to everyone on the planet. I live in New York City now, but I didn't always. I grew up in suburbia, and this was my house. My dad was a businessman, and my mom was a writer. They loved each other, and they loved me. We were a happy family, until we weren't. When I was 4 years old, my mom collapsed on the bedroom floor. We'd just moved into a new house, and our house had a carbon monoxide gas leak, but none of us knew it until then. She didn't die that day, but her immune system did. She became allergic to everything. Perfume, the ink from books, radio waves. She wore strange masks all the time and was often connected to oxygen. The toxic gas destroyed her immune system, and in a way, my childhood too. After the poisoning, our roles reversed, and I began to take care of her. As the only child, I had to be a good one. I learned to cook, do laundry, and take care of the house. I was a good Christian kid who played piano in church and wanted to be a doctor when I grew up to help sick people like her. Until I turned 18. Music was my escape, so I joined a band and moved to New York.
Right about the time when the band broke up, I got involved in producing these live music shows in the city.
I realized that you could actually get paid in New York City to drink alcohol for free. This job was called a nightclub promoter. So you just had to get beautiful people in the clubs, and if you got the right people in the clubs, you could charge guys $500 to buy a bottle of champagne that cost you $40.
I moved from club to club to club, filling up the VIP section and flashing my Rolex to the club photographers. For almost 10 years after that, I smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day and was out drunk almost every night. I was into strip clubs, gambling, and just about every drug except heroin.
On New Year's Eve, we all went to Punta del Este. It's a kind of party town in Uruguay.
We rented this incredible house with cooks, waiters, and magnums of expensive champagne.
Although it looked glamorous on the outside, there was a long decline in happiness. And I remember just feeling so unhealthy about it all.
The next day, the party was still going, but I wanted the music to stop.
I realized I was spiritually bankrupt, I was emotionally bankrupt, I was certainly morally bankrupt.
I tried to find my way back to a very lost faith. I wanted things to be different. I left nightlife, sold almost everything I owned, and decided to take 1 year off to try serving others instead of myself.
I'm filling out these long applications for these very credible humanitarian organizations that have long histories. I put in the applications and then I wait. And I guess I should not have been surprised, but I am denied by all of these organizations. They won't even let me volunteer because of my past.
So they're like, what do you do again? We're serious people. Thankfully, one organization says, if you pay us $500 a month, you can volunteer with us. So I said, here are my credit card details. Where are you guys going?
They were an amazing team of doctors and surgeons who traveled the world on a hospital ship. They specialized in removing facial tumors, and they were going to Liberia, one of the poorest countries in the world, and a country I'd never even heard of.
I say, I'm gonna sign up and be your volunteer photojournalist. I'd always taken pretty good pictures and photos and loved telling stories. Everything in my life changed. I decided in one fell swoop to kind of never smoke again, to never touch drugs again, to never gamble again, to swear off pornography and strip clubs, and I needed to walk so far in the other direction. And I walked up this gangway, and this became my new home.
Nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to see.
My name is Scott. I think we may be able to help you.
I met a man named Harris. He was suffocating to death with a benign tumor. I got to see Harris's transformation because of an amazing surgeon named Dr. Gary Parker.
So we've got to get your blood nice and strong for an operation, huh?
Dr. Gary had moved his entire family on the ship to volunteer for a short time. That was 29 years ago. He'd just never left. I'd never met anyone with that kind of dedication before.
Very happy we can schedule, and you'll spend Christmas here. First good Christmas in 13 years.
A couple weeks later, I got to take Harris back home to his village with an entirely new face, ready to start a new life.
The uniform that's put on people when you have these terrible deformities is you're rubbish, you're worthless, you're spiritually cursed, and when you can change the uniform, it's huge. And the person starts to imagine that they might not be rubbish after all. No one in our world is rubbish.
There was one day when more than 5,000 sick people came to see our doctors. Some of them had walked for more than a month. But there were too many of them, and we just didn't have enough doctors. I remember holding my camera, crying. We had to turn thousands away. We were changing individual lives every day, but I wanted to do even more.
I'm documenting these life-changing surgeries, but I started to spend more and more time out in the rural villages. And as I would travel around these villages, I would see the most shocking things.
475 people living here. And this is what they're drinking. You can see there's bugs crawling around in it.
I'm sort of putting this together saying, look, thousands of people are turning up sick, and the most basic need for health isn't even met. It wasn't okay. Kids shouldn't be drinking from scummy swamps or ponds or rivers.
أرجوت ستي خلوي ستي أتقامي نرنا لو مجن سلام منجستنا صبق ماينان ستلنا.
He came here to fetch water, and a crocodile
fell into the river.
and a crocodile snatched him.
Disappeared everywhere. Not even our body was not even found.
There were so many diseases caused by bad water: cholera, dysentery, trachoma, bilharzia, things I'd never even heard of. On top of that, I found out people weren't just drinking this filthy water, they were breaking their backs to get it. Women and girls are usually the ones responsible, often walking for hours every day. As a result, many girls never make it through school. They trade in their education and dreams to carry 40-pound jerry cans so their families can have water. Dirty water is responsible for more death in the world than all forms of violence, including war. Even if it were 1 million people, this would be a crisis. But it's not 1 million. It's 663 million people that live on our planet right now without access to clean water. That's twice the population of the United States. nearly 1 in 10 people worldwide. Behind those statistics were real lives, people who were dying because they couldn't get clean water. And many of them were children.
ସାତରେ ଆମ ଝିଅ ଗୋଟେ ମରିଯାଇଛି ନିଜ ଝିଅ 5ଟାରୁ ଆରମ୍ଭ ହେଲା 7ଟା ଭିତରେ ଝିଅ ମରିଗଲା ହେଲେ କ'ଣ ପାଇଁ ଏମିତି ହେଲା ସମସ୍ତେ କହିଲେ ଯେ ପାଣି
كان حلمي لما نيوزي قاريوس هذا لكن أطيعومس لو تمرت بخدو كحكمنا نفعله.
I began to become really interested in the water issue and who was doing something about this. How come more people weren't talking about water?
I came back to New York City ready to go.
So it started with a party. It's the only thing I knew how to do. I was a nightclub promoter. So I got someone to donate a club. I threw my 31st birthday party. I got 700 people to come out. I lured them with open bar. And I charged them $20 at the door. And this time, instead of pocketing the $15,000, we took it immediately to a refugee camp in northern Uganda. We built 3 wells, we fixed 3 wells, and then we sent the photos and the GPS and the story back to those 700 people. This was a big deal. People could not believe that a charity would bother to report to them on a $20 gift, and that something actually happened with the money that they could see, that they could connect with.
700 people proved that we could make a difference, even $20 at a time. This was the beginning of Charity Water.
As I'm talking about setting up a charity, I realized that so many of my friends don't trust charities. In fact, I learned that 42% of people in America alone don't trust charities.
From the beginning, I was determined to do things differently, and I had a few big ideas. First, we'd handle money differently. From day one, Charity Water made a bold promise that 100% of all donations would go directly to clean water. I opened up a separate bank account for overhead, and we never touched the water money to pay for things like staff salaries, office rent, or travel expenses. We started looking for generous people with the resources to cover those overhead costs. Second, we proved each water project we funded. We put photos and GPS coordinates on Google Maps and even attached GPS trackers to drilling rigs so people could follow them. Later, we created and installed thousands of remote water sensors, so we'd know that the project continued to work over time, and even how much clean water was flowing. Third, we believe for the work to be sustainable, it had to be led by locals.
Water and sanitation program creates an enabling environment so that all aspects of development can take off.
In the beginning, usually a handful of people were in the office every single day. And it was funny back then because we were trying to look so professional and put together when if you just walked in the office and saw how we did what we did, we had no idea what we were doing. And we were just making everything up as we went.
We built outdoor exhibitions, staged water walks, and designed ads that made people think differently about water. We got space on buses and taxis donated, spreading the word to everyone we could. We took over the windows of luxury retailers and created a TV commercial that ran for free to more than 20 million people. People started to take notice, and thousands began to donate. People all around the world started donating their birthdays to raise money for clean water. A 7-year-old named Max went door to door asking for $7 donations, and he raised $22,000. Maggie Moran gave up her 16th birthday. Nona Ween gave up her 89th.
Gave up my 28th birthday for Charity Water. My 25th birthday.
39th birthday.
25th, 36th, 38th.
44th. And this movement of birthdays begins to spring up, and people said, look, I don't need any more stuff.
That's exactly what Rachel Beckwith said. She heard me speak a few months before her 9th birthday and told her mom that instead of presents or a party, she wanted to raise $300 to help kids get clean water to drink instead. She was disappointed when she didn't reach her goal, but she raised $220, and her mom assured her it was good enough. She could try again next year. She never got that chance. A few weeks later, Rachel lost her life in a car accident.
Well, just at 9 years old, Rachel Beckwith already had a legacy. Hers was charity water.
NBC's Lee Cowan explains how even now, Rachel Beckwith continues to make a difference.
Hundreds of strangers started to give $9 in her honor. Then it became thousands. Within weeks, Rachel's fundraising campaign had raised over $1.2 million for clean water. The heart of this 9-year-old girl inspired 32,000 people to give. But it didn't stop there. 80,000 people pledged their birthdays like Rachel.
Some people said, I can't wait until my birthday. I just need to fundraise now. I need to do something about this now.
Guys shaved their beards. Complete strangers started climbing mountains to raise money for clean water, walking and biking across countries, sailing across oceans.
I've been giving up Christmas gifts for 5 years. I've raised just above $32,000.
I did 12 lemonade stands for charity water.
I raised $10,000 for clean water.
Rachel reminded us that charity water wasn't just our story. And she's now been joined by over 1 million people, helping us fund over 20,000 water projects that will bring clean water to 6.3 million people. And I got to see just how much impact one life really can have when I took Rachel's family to Africa.
We greatly love Rachel and continue to love her family, and I'm overwhelmed with how greatly you have honored her memory. Please receive my most deepest and heartfelt thanks. You've done us a great honor today, so thank you. Yeah.
Rachel developed such a big heart from such a young age that she understood and felt the pain of others on the other side of the world. It's the most beautiful gift a person can give.
Lives all around the world were being changed. The kids I saw sitting in the mud with the pigs, drinking swamp water, were now drinking clean water from wells. Cholera, parasites, leeches, those were all now things of the past. Clean water and toilets made a huge difference in schools and improved education for students. Moms were now dancing around drilling rigs.
ما يقربنا ساعات جزانا نفسر لنا ساعات جزانا نلمس لنا ساعات دقنا نحصر لنا ساعات خدانا مصريتهم نحلم لنا ما يقربنا.
In the beginning, there was water, always changing and bringing new life wherever it goes. It did for me, and for so many others in very real ways. Even though I didn't grow up to be a doctor, I'm thankful that my childhood gave me awareness of the importance of health, of life. Dr. Gary is still on that ship, helping people every single day. My mom is still here too, fighting for her health. My son knows and loves her well. So will my daughter. Now I know the world will change by the time my children reach my age. But I believe there are only a few times in each of our lives that we get to witness a truly historic global moment. And giving clean water to the entire planet will be one of those moments. I invite you to be a part of this. We've been able to help more than 6 million people get clean water, but we want to do so much more. We want to go faster and help more people. So we're introducing a new way to do just that. It's called the Spring. This year, Charity Water turns 10, and we're looking for 10,000 of you to join us and make this your story too. We're building a community of givers so generous and constant, the world has never seen anything like it before. People who are willing to give not just once, but who will stick with us month in and month out, faithfully fighting for change. We subscribe to things every month: cable internet, magazines, movies, and music. We're loyal to these things because they benefit our lives. But the spring benefits other people's lives. It costs only $30 to give one person clean water. Some of you can give that every month. Some of you can give more, some of you less. But whatever you can give, 100% goes directly to clean water, and we'll keep showing you where your money goes and the lives that you're changing. We're looking for 10,000 members to join us right now. And when we get there, we'll grow to 100,000, and then 1 million, until the day we can finally say that no one on earth will die from dirty water.
So we realize people will tell us this can't be done, but we think, man, if there's ever a time in the world when this is possible, it's certainly today. When people are really looking to give, they're looking to make an impact.
We know how to end the water crisis in our lifetime, and with your help, we will. Join the spring today.
Please join me in welcoming Scott Harrison and moderator Rachel Hout to the stage.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here with Scott to talk a little bit about the incredible things that he's achieved. That the film that you all just watched is just a snapshot of the incredible impact that Charity Water has had, and so many interesting lessons on leveraging entrepreneurship and creativity to make an impact at scale. So would love to get into that.
And we met 10 years ago.
Yeah, and we met 10 years ago. So I'm very grateful to NYU for bringing us together, because back in the day, mini entrepreneurship story, I had a startup called Ground Report, and one of the first topics we decided to cover was this awesome new nonprofit that we were hearing about called Charity Water. And it was one of the first pieces of content we had on the citizen journalism platform. So fast forward 10 years, it's just amazing to see what Scott's achieved. So
and we just found out backstage that we have 2 kids the same age with the same names.
Pretty funny. We both have a Jack and an Emma.
In order.
Almost the same age. So yeah, just pretty cool to be full circle here for what is also just starting to understand like the gravity and how revolutionary it is what you're doing with the Charity Water model. I think Charity Water has had so many moments where it has completely reinvented the sort of the nonprofit world, the social enterprise world, and it's exciting to be here. So I think the video obviously is a great window into that, but do you want to just talk a little bit about, looking back in the past 10 years, can you believe it's been 10 years, and what has this journey meant for you as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, we feel old. 10 years, I mean, we just celebrated our anniversary in September, and wanted to take the time to look back. I mean, it's been so hard, really. And I get asked a lot, so we've raised about $250 million now from 1 million donors around the world. And I get asked a lot, like, did you ever think you guys would raise so much money, or be so successful? And the real answer is I thought we would have been 10x more successful. I mean, I can't believe we've done so little, is the really honest answer. It's freaking water. I mean, we've given away 100% of every donation. So that's kind of like how we think of the decade. We've done a lot. We've helped 7 million people get water now. There are 660 million people on the planet without water, so we've solved more than 1% of the current global problem, but we're not going fast enough. We're much more ambitious, and I think that film was really in response to a business problem that we realized a decade in, that we'd really built a one-time donation business. So 1 million people gave once. Yeah, some portion of them repeated, but a very small portion. And every year, we would have an amazing year. In 2014, we helped 1 million people get water that year alone. It's like 3,000 people every day of the year.
And January 1, it starts at 0. And I would always look at my wife and say, how did we do what we did last year? How would we ever do that again? And then you start at 0 and you try and do all over again and grow. So this film was really trying to create a business model pivot where we would go from people donating their birthday once, or giving $100 or $500 once, to building a community of people who could give 30, 50, 100 every single month, where we'd be able to communicate with them in a dynamic way, and they would stick with us over a period of years, not just kind of one and done.
That's amazing. So I think in the commercial and for-profit world, we talk a lot about SaaS, software as a service, subscription models.
Spotify did 50 million yesterday, across 50 million subs.
So how do you learn from Spotify to make impact?
We talk to their people.
Right.
Daniel Ek has been to Ethiopia with us and is a major supporter. And actually, our team talks to their team about churn and about, as we go and learn the subscription business. Interestingly, we're not talking to other nonprofits as much as we're talking to the for-profits.
Right, and that's fascinating. I know that people like Jack Dorsey are big vocal supporters, a lot of tech entrepreneurs and tech founders. So why aren't you talking to the nonprofits? Part of that might be obvious or maybe not. And what do you learn from the startup founders, from the for-profit world, and what do they learn from you?
We love technology. I mean, anytime a new technology comes out, we look at it kind of rapidly, figuring out how we can adopt it for good. So, the first time we heard about VR, we started scrambling. We changed all of the creative priorities, and we made a film last May. So one of the first, humanitarian films in VR, and then we started showing it everywhere. And the film raised millions and millions of dollars before people were even, talking about VR. And we really capitalized on just the public's interest to even know what it was. So we're like, if people are going to have their first VR experience, rather than porn or gaming, or I don't know, standing on the top of a Marriott penthouse looking at Dubai, why don't they experience a 13-year-old girl in Ethiopia getting clean water for the first time and see if we can make them cry and create an emotional experience? So, the nonprofit sector typically is 10 years behind. So they wait and see. So there are a bunch of nonprofit leaders that are saying, is VR going to be a thing? Is it going to be a thing? Is it going to be a thing? And maybe 8 years from now, they would put a budget together to make their first film. So I think we think so differently. We were the first charity to use Instagram. The morning they opened it up to brands and nonprofits, our team was waiting, to set up an account. We were the first charity to get 1 million Twitter followers, just because we were early to a lot of these platforms. So I think that's why we've had so much support from the entrepreneur community, because we look at this like a startup. We're a 10-year-old startup, and the people that work at Charity Water are leaving Google, Twitter, Facebook, Adobe, Zynga. They're coming from a lot of these companies. Some of them have made some money. Some of them are leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars of stock options on the table to try to use their skills in the service of others. But they would not want to work in a traditional bureaucratic nonprofit.
Right, and I can imagine people who are in tech like to solve really challenging problems at scale.
And it's a big problem, and it's a human problem.
So
even though water doesn't, affect anyone here, I mean, there's probably no one in this room that has ever had to walk 8 hours for water to a swamp, or sometimes there's one or two. But you've all dealt with cancer. We've all dealt with homelessness. So that is our first challenge, is just inspiring people to care about something that is happening to human beings thousands of miles away and not in our backyard. When we do that, though, it's such a basic universal need that pretty much everyone agrees this is a good thing to do. Human beings need clean water to thrive, to be healthy, to be happy. So that's kind of the first challenge, is just getting people to stop for a moment and think about something and invite them to be a part of the solution.
So once you break people out of maybe their day-to-day and get them in this frame of mind, then I think it's really interesting to see how you've transformed the nonprofit model to think and act more like a startup. So I was really impressed hearing about some of the numbers that are happening right now, but can you talk a little bit about the scale, about how many people you're employing, not just in the US, but at your sites around the world, and where you want to go with that?
So we're a small team here. We have 76 people out of about 20,000 square feet in Tribeca. But around the world, we employ 1,500 locals every day who are working on these projects. So of the money that we raise for the water projects, there are 600 people in Ethiopia only out there doing charity water projects. There are 8 or 9 drilling rigs, technicians, hydrologists, drivers, accountants going out there. And that's a really powerful part of the model. We wanted to raise awareness and money. We wanted to build a hyper-transparent charity where people could actually feel connected to the impact that their donations would have. But we really believe for the work to be contextual and sustainable, it had to be led by locals. So none of those people are expats. They are 1,500 people indigenous to the countries. There's 600 Ethiopians, there's 100 people in Rwanda that are all Rwandans. So we provide project management and oversight and auditing and a bunch of capacity building, but it's really led by these local teams, which is amazing. And they are inspiring, and some of them have been at it for 40 years, trying to improve the lives of their communities, of their countries.
It's not just water, you're providing jobs for a full
Yeah,
community.
and that's cool, and that's been really cool. We helped hire 500 people in Ethiopia as the program grew over the last 9 years.
And so talk a little bit about the scale you've been able to reach at operating with about 45 million per year, and what your target is, especially with the new initiative.
Yeah. So it costs us about about $11 million to run Charity Water headquarters. Of that, about $3 million would be the programs team who's managing these projects. And then this year we'll hope to raise about $33 million for the water projects to give 1 million people clean water. We have a 3x delta in the people that we can serve with clean water than the money that we're raising. So if we raised $100 million this year, we would know what to do with it, and we would help 3 million people. So at the moment, we have a fundraising challenge, is how do we grow the community? How do we raise more money? Because it sucks to end the year and know that there were 2 million people out there that we knew how to help, that we have the capacity, but we haven't been smart enough yet to raise the money to reach them. So that wasn't always true. I would say in the early days, we would kind of have $10 million of capacity and we'd raise 11. And we would go and scramble for that last one. And then we would find $15 million of capacity across all of our countries, and we'd raise 16 or 17. So over the last 2 years, the exercise has really been, let's go out and know what we would do, and then believe that the money would come.
And what strikes me is that this is sort of the moment that if you were a startup, this would be when you'd go out and raise, your Series A, your Series B, because you've sort of cracked it, your addressable market, you can deliver to them, and you just need the money to sort of grow and get there. There is no, obviously, VC for the nonprofit world.
That's true. We don't make anybody rich except, the beneficiaries.
Right, and so you're enlisting
so
really
we're
the world
bootstrapping it forever.
to get there. And I hope everyone saw that that the model, which we see in some great models like Robinhood, is that all the administrative costs are covered by a specific set of
And we borrowed
donors.
it from Robinhood. I mean, I wrote Paul Tudor Jones 10 years ago and said, hey, would you help? And I don't think I got an email back from him. But I thought, so I mentioned it there, 40% of Americans distrust charities. There was an NYU study that I came across. 70% of Americans think charities either mishandle money or badly mishandle money. So, we have this unbelievable cultural heritage of being generous. No one is more generous than Americans, but 70% of the people in this country think the system is broken and charities are inept at handling money. So I thought Tudor Jones 10 years ago figured this out because he took the #1 objection people have and he eliminated it. He said, I'm so rich, I'm a hedge fund manager, I've made billions of dollars. My friends and I can cover the overhead endlessly so that 100% of the public's money would go. So we tried that with $200. I went to the Commerce Bank on Broadway and Bond at the time and opened up these 2 bank accounts with $100 and said, let's see if we can bootstrap it. And it was incredibly difficult, and we almost went bankrupt. And there are so many stories of, looking at the cliff of missing payroll in the account for overhead, but having raised millions of dollars we couldn't touch for the water projects. And we just kind of stayed the course and never compromised on that. And over time, a bunch of people said, we want to pay for your overhead. So the way that it works today, there are 117 families. About half of them are tech entrepreneurs. So it's people at Apple, it's the founders of Spotify and Twitter and Facebook and WordPress and Pandora and a lot of these amazing tech companies. Those are the founders that say, we want to pay for your software engineers. We want to pay for your product designers. We want to pay for your accountants and your program managers so that the public can get this very clear pure way to give.
It's incredible. So I'm going to ask a couple more questions and then would love to open it up for Q&A. Before I do that, can we just see a show of hands? Like, who here is interested in potentially launching their own social enterprise of the audience? Okay. So we have a few. So get your questions ready, and I'll just sort of give sort of a broad question. I don't know if you've read The Hard Thing About Hard Things by.
I haven't. I've heard it's great. By Ben Horowitz.
By Ben Horowitz. Thank you.
I've read The Struggle by Ben Horowitz many times.
Yeah. So
a great blog post.
So I haven't read. You know what? I think that blog post must be a part of the book. That's what I was going to highlight. Is that it's all about embrace the struggle. The thing of like staring down. Am I going to make payroll? Just the premise that nothing can prepare you for being a founder other than being a founder, which he says all the time, which I think is amazing. And it's a great book. It's sort of like a support, like self-help for CEOs. But what if you could tell something to yourself or to someone who's just getting started out in social entrepreneurship? What are the things like, definitely avoid this, things to know, things not to do that you did, and things to focus on that will save them time, be more efficient? What would your advice be for aspiring social entrepreneurs?
So I'm all about getting clear on your values early. It probably took us 4 years until we did that exercise to write down the values. And we have what's called values and isms. So the isms are the 15 things that are unique to your culture, kind of the way that you live out your values. So for instance, one of our values is integrity, obviously, because we're trying to win the public's trust back around money. One of the isms would be we don't pirate software. If we're buying 10 if we have 10 instances of Final Cut, we're paying Apple $1,000 10 times. Most nonprofits are like, we're not friggin' paying Apple. We're just going to install this on a bunch of different computers and turn off our internet on one. And we license all of our music, which is again, incredibly taxing sometimes. So, the time spent licensing the music and the clips in that video. Oh my gosh, some of that stock footage. And a lot of nonprofits say, oh, no one's going to come after us. We're a nonprofit. So I think getting clear about that really early is so important because then it determines how you hire and it determines how you act in crisis. So with that integrity value, we were going to make the choice to go bankrupt and Charity Water would have ceased to exist 8 years ago rather than borrow from the $881,000 in the account for the water projects because we'd made this promise. The advice we were getting at the time was money's fungible, write an IOU, you got to pay your people, you got to make payroll, you got to pay your landlord. And I could understand that, but we were really clear that to borrow 1 penny, there would be a crack in our integrity, there would be a crack at the foundation, we might as well all resign in shame and go do something else. And at that moment, we, as the universe would have it, a stranger walked into the office and wrote $1 million check for overhead. Amazing. After we'd made the decision to do the right thing. So I think values are really important and just, it's really hard. I think a lot of people that come to Charity Water, they'll work for 2.2 years or 2.4 years and they're gonna have 4 or 5 jobs in their 20s. I was just speaking in California last week with a very, very successful fashion CEO of, a multi-billion-dollar company. People were asking what the secret to success was. And he's like, I showed up for 26 years. I started in the mailroom at Prada. I was like putting away, taking out the trash. And 26 years later, if you just keep showing up and you work hard and you stay true to your values, great things happen. So I think stay the course is another one, and just be prepared for how hard it's going to be.
It's critical. And I guess the other thing that I think would be interesting to hear, not just for in a social enterprise, but really for any enterprise is 10 years, it can either feel really long or really short. With a startup that's successful or you're clearly out of startup mode, $45 million a year, how do you constantly change? I mean, I look back and throughout my life have watched the different methods that Charity Water used. So it used to be the birthdays, and people would dedicate their birthdays, and the use of the water jug as a symbol, and so many different events, and looking at really honing in on water, et cetera. And you talk about things like VR, you talk about things like Instagram. How do you decide now is the time to make a change? Now is the time to try a new model? How do you know that the moment is right for those things? And maybe it's more art than science.
I think a lot of it is intuition.
we've always tried to innovate our way out of our challenges. So again, it was just touched on in the video, but 5 years ago, we realized that we were coming up on 10,000 water points around the world, and we knew where they all were, and we'd actually made that data set publicly transparent. So anyone here could have gone to REI in Soho and bought a $50 GPS device and gone and visited every charity water well. And first of all, when we put that data set up from day one, people said, that's crazy. What if people went to their well and it was broken? And we'd say, well, we would want to know that it was broken. I mean, you can't hide. That's not where the world is going. We'd want to fix it. We'd want to figure out what went wrong in the, the implementation of the project. So 5 years ago, we realized that we have so many projects. We know they were all built. We know that water was flowing on day one. We actually don't know that they're working 5 years later. So we went to Google and we said, we have this crazy idea. What if we could build a remote sensor that we could install in these highly remote, environments, sometimes 120-degree temperatures, sometimes no cell towers, but then we would know how much water was flowing. And Google gave us a $5 million grant. They just wired $5 million and said, go work on this problem. And then we spent 3 years failing, working with 20 labs, creating really bad sensors that didn't work. But then 3 years later, we created a prototype that did work, and then we installed 3,000. And now, in Tribeca, we're monitoring almost 2 billion liters of water from remote villages around the world. We know that we're at 91% success rate today across thousands and thousands of projects. We're sending technicians to the 9%. So I think it's just that's what's kept us going. There are always problems to solve. Now we have a problem to solve that we're a $45 million organization that starts at zero every year. How do we build a community of people who would show up for us every month where we could start January 1 with a $45 million community or a $50 million community and build on that?
Incredible. So you have IoT, Internet of Things, already happening through Charity Water. I'm thinking to one of the startups we have at our campus at 1776 in Brooklyn. It's called Aero Analytics, and it's a drone with computer vision that analyzes infrastructure for integrity issues like a facade, or see if there's
I've heard about this, actually.
Rust on a cell tower. Something like that could be interesting. What are the other, for analyzing, say your pumps? What are some of the technologies that you're excited about now that you're seeing out there? Blockchain, AI. Obviously, VR, you're there.
I'm headed to Seattle after this. We've been kind of interested in some of the AI stuff and how we could use that. Just the tracking, we're always having fun with tracking. We crowdsourced a bunch of drilling rigs, and they're these huge $1.1 million just beasts. And we put GPS units and we gave all the drilling rigs Twitter accounts. And we told our Ethiopian drillers, before you drill a well, press this button, and it would tweet its location. So the 10,000 people that gave $100 on average to fund the $1 million drilling rig could feel connected in real time. So really for us, it's all about using technology to serve our beneficiaries. So in the case of sensors, to make sure that we're not counting projects as complete and successful that are actually unsuccessful and communities are back at the swamp. While you and your husband and your kids have a nice picture of the well you built in your refrigerator 6 years ago, but it broke. And it broke in a vacuum and nobody knew about it. So we're using technology to help beneficiaries from a mission standpoint, but also to connect people. It's funny, from Spotify, I sent Daniel Ek his sensor data recently, and he'd given up his birthday 5 or 6 years ago, funded a bunch of water projects. He actually went to Ethiopia to visit them. But I said, hey, last Tuesday, 1,724 liters were pumped from your well. So that idea of connectedness is really cool. And he probably didn't wake up thinking about his well in Ethiopia 6 years later. But knowing, you think about 1,700 bottles of Poland Spring every single day times 365 days times 6 years, and it's an extraordinary impact.
It's incredible. So I want to give a chance to the folks in the audience, if you do have questions for Scott, to share them. So any hands, anyone who has some questions? I see there's one right here. If you want to speak up, we'll repeat the question too.
First of all, thank you so much for coming and showing your video and speaking. I started a nonprofit 2 years ago while I was in school, and now I'm coming close to graduating, and any of the money that we've raised for our cause has gone straight to operating costs and making sure that we're running, and no one who works on it has ever gotten a penny. And now I'm at a place where I'm not a grant writer, and I've written about 10 grants, and I actually even just started a blog called Glass Full of No, because I'm so optimistic and like keep hearing the word no, and about to move back in with my parents and work on it to try and be able to make it, full time and make it, grow. But I guess in terms of this overhead, I keep getting told how to talk to a philanthropist or someone who's ready to give money, but where do you find those people, and how do you find them? Because in my experience, even right, like you said, we can't speak to VCs. There are very few incubator accelerator programs. There's maybe one or two which are nearly impossible to get into. So really, in terms of having found people to cover your overhead, how many doors slammed in your face before you got there?
We heard no a lot, and we still hear no. Today's no, when you're at our level, is people just don't write you back. Or they cancel an appointment and then they don't reschedule it. So, it's a different no. Back in the early days, people were happy to say, that's a dumb idea. You shouldn't do that. Who cares about people in Africa or India? Why aren't you working here at home? We heard every objection in the book. I don't recommend the 100% model for everyone. So I think it was right for us and the problem we were trying to solve. I was reaching out to people who were not giving, who would never give $1 to the United Way or the March of Dimes or the Salvation Army. I just think donors want to know where their money goes. And people are open to a lot of value propositions. If I told you guys right now that the biggest problem at Charity Water was a broken copy machine, and we needed $1,500 to fix it to carry on our mission, this room would raise $1,500 in a heartbeat. So people give to people. I think that's one of the main things I've learned. Of the 117 families supporting all of our overhead, maybe 5 care about water. Maybe 3 care about water. People want to help support your vision. So I think if you can go tell a story, why you're passionate about whatever your cause is, there will be people that want to help you achieve your goals. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, then they'll be joined by more and more and more. I heard no thousands of times. I came home last night and my wife was watching videos from this woman named Marie Forleo, who is a supporter of ours, and there was someone on, Bryce Dallas Howard, I think, was the actress, and she said, a working actor, it takes 64 auditions. This is for a working actor. They go out 64 times to land a role. And she started counting her no's, and I think her first gig was like 47 no's or something, and she got on the 48. So I think just, you got to be prepared for that. And then someone says yes, and you kind of grab onto that as a little glimmer of hope, and you put that check in the bank, and then no, and then someone else says yes. And then you ask the person who said yes, where can I find someone else that would say yes? Who else do you know? Tell stories, invite yourself to speak. So we did that a lot early on. Companies are looking to bring people in on lunch hours to hear about causes, to find ways to engage in the world at large. So I invited myself in to speak at Twitter when there were 28 employees. Immediately after that talk, got put on the suggested user list. Chris Saka came to me with Ethiopia. Jack Dorsey became a donor to the overhead side. But I invited myself to speak at Facebook. I invited myself to speak at Google. A lot of these relationships, just, hey, can I come and talk to you guys about what we're doing? Most people don't say no to that, and then you just have to tell your story.
Thank you. Great. I think we have time for a couple more. Any other questions? Back in the middle.
Hi, Brendan McCormick. I'm a master's student at Steinhardt. I just want to say thank you for licensing the music for your video.
Cool.
Yeah, more of a comment than a question, a little praise.
That was it.
Any other?
Kuno.
What are the ways we support charity work's work in the field and at home?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. How can we support the work? I'd say, my answer would have been birthdays a few years ago, and that really does work. If you have a birthday coming up and you don't want to get a tie or a wallet or a handbag or an iTunes gift card, it's a really nice way to involve your friends and your family in the service of others, and people can see where 100% of the money goes, and we prove all those dollars. But one of the challenges was it's one and done. People do a charity water birthday, they have a great experience. The average person actually raises $1,000. So that's the power of this thing. If 100 people did it, there's $100,000 raised. And the average donors to a campaign is 15. So you have these powerful little mini word-of-mouth movements out there as, I don't know all of your friends, but you go and spread the idea to them. I'd say now, as we're thinking about the next decade, join the spring first, even if it's $10 a month, so that we could talk to you about birthdays, we could talk to you about volunteer opportunities, we can educate you on the water crisis. But we're really trying to create that connection month in and month out and build a community. So there's probably people, there's broke students in here who could probably give $5 a month. Maybe there's some successful business owners that could give $30 or $50 a month. So that's really probably the most important thing for us is to actually grow that program to be successful over the next 10 years.
Right, I think we have maybe one more question all the way in the back. I see it's you, sir, who's, I think it's a sir.
Yes.
I can't really see.
We see you.
Hang on, I'm bringing the mic over.
Hi, my name is Ken Otto. I'm not a student here. I know a student, and he told me to come, so that's why I'm here.
Cool.
That's what we do.
Security must be tight here.
I paid for it.
That's great.
My question to you is not necessarily about you or the company. It's more about the communities that you've helped so far.
Yeah.
Where do the people that are like the leadership in those communities, where do they see their communities going forward now that you kind of transformed their lives with clean water? Where do you see it going in the next 5 years?
That is a great question. So we've really focused on water. A lot of organizations will try to do water, hunger, education, health. With so many people without water, we've really kind of gone into community, done water, sanitation, hygiene, and then moved on. It's now, again, when you finish a decade, you now kind of get this clean sheet of paper, like the new Moleskine book, to think about how the next 10 years should be different than the first. And we're having a lot more collaborative conversations now with Heifer, for instance. We just had the CEO of heifer.org. They've done livelihoods for many years. How could we use the water to better, how could we use the water for agriculture? How could we use the water for animal husbandry? We were just meeting with the NTD people from the END Fund. So many of their diseases that they're after are actually waterborne. Trachoma is a waterborne disease. How do we start overlaying with some of these groups now that we know where all of our projects are? Even some of the education programs. We're going into schools and giving them clean water and also toilets, which is actually twice as expensive. To go and do a sanitation project at a school will be 20 grand. The well's only 10 grand. But we now have lit up all these schools with clean water, hygiene, and sanitation. Some of them don't have roofs. So how do we collaborate with the education organizations who could come in alongside us? So a lot of it's a spark. I'm headed to Ethiopia next week for the 29th time. So I spend a lot of time in these communities meeting with the local leaders. And you're right, they're ambitious. I will get asked in every single community, what's next? Thank you so much for the water. We have a problem with the school. We have a problem with the health clinic. We have a problem with which is just smart. They're ambitious and they want to improve the lives of everyone in the community. So we have stayed focused. I think you'll see a little more collaboration, even if it's just sharing our data set and where we've worked with other orgs in the next 10 years. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Where are you from originally?
Oh, I'm New York City, baby, all day.
It's New York. So, the scale and the impact is incredible. I know I've been inspired today. I'm going to go to charitywater.org/thespring.
The spring. And if you actually sharing the film really helps us, because that came out, and I think we picked up 3,500 subscribers online. So you can find that on our Facebook, and that just helps if you share it. People don't know about us. It's you'd be surprised. How many people don't know about us? And if you've got kids, it's a great thing to share with them as well. We have a lot of kids that are coming through the office now, so that's another thing for the next 10 years. And if you're starting a social enterprise, realizing we didn't service kids that much. We didn't gear content towards them, and now it's a really big deal. Parents are looking to immediately involve their children in philanthropy. We both have two about the same age. I mean, I did a birthday campaign for my kid to try to immediately start this early legacy, that he could step into, that I could tell him about. So that's a really powerful way to engage parents and donors, is go reach their kids.
Amazing. So charitywater.org/thespring.
Cool.
I'll make the plug if you won't. And
Thanks.
congratulations. Everyone join me in thanking.
Thanks for having me.